I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm obsessed with small to medium businesses growing. As business owners, we take so much risk and we want to make sure it's worth it. I believe one of the best presents you can give yourself as a business owner is to be able to learn how to scale your people, your profit, and your processes. Hello and welcome to Grow Your Business podcast. I am Shivani Gupta. I am your host. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I have heard so many people speak about in the last 20 plus years. And that is this notion of this Gen Z. You know, how do they work? How do we motivate them? And how do we actually get things happening so that we can get the growth in our businesses that we're all looking for? And have these people do that. So, the first thing I wanted to speak about is that there's a lot of people that talk about this newer generation, the youngest generation that is. And I know that if you're not familiar with the generations, there's been some really great research that's been done around the world by many great leads, including Harvard, Forbes, number of different places that are very well known around the world that have talked about how the values of each generation is different. So we had our veterans, we had our baby boomers, which was, more of my parents' generation. We've then had Gen X's, which I fit into, then Gen Y, and then Gen Z's. And obviously the generational conversation will continue because when we're trying to grow a business, it's really important to be able to look at what are some of the things that these Gen Zs are looking for. How can we motivate them so that they can do better at work, they can have more satisfaction when they are working in our businesses, and what are the unique characteristics so that we can really tap into that and do that. So if you're managing, whether you're an owner with only 2 employees, or whether you're a business owner with many employees, but you've got people in your team that need to be managed that fall into the Gen Zs, then it's really important to actually work out what happens. So let's talk about what it is that they really desire. Let's talk about what really motivates them. So the first thing the Gen Zs love, and that's not to say most employees don't love that, but they particularly really are motivated by regular feedback on their performance. And the reason is that when you look at their lifestyle and how they've grown up, everything is actually very real time. So when they look at their social media, if they're experiencing a particular cafe, or they will go and be the people that update things, give it ratings, talk about what's happening. So they're used to this instantaneous world that some of the other generations haven't grown up with. And, when you look at the fact that the first Apple phone came out in 2009, it seems like we've had it for half our lifetimes, but we haven't. We've actually only had it since 2009. So for that generation that's grown up with these devices where everything is on the tip of a finger, they update their circle of friends regularly. They update what's happening around the world differently. They've got videos on what's happening in the world, 3 minutes ago, and then they can keep that. So because they've got that on their fingertips, because that's what they're used to, doing things in real time, when it comes to working in our businesses as we're trying to grow our business, they want things instantaneously. So if your traditional methodology has been to do an annual review on their performance, or even twice a year review, that often isn't enough to keep their morale up and to keep their productivity up. So what we need to do is swap out those annual review performance and the culture and the rhythm that you might have in your business into something where they can do it constantly. So doing perhaps informal ones on a weekly basis, and then perhaps a formal update, maybe having down to a 1-page, something that they can update really regularly is really, really important. So have a look at that system that currently exists in your system. Have a look at the number of Gen Zs that work for you, and how do we motivate them? Now, does that mean we have to increase that frequency for all of our employees? No, that could be a choice that you give some of your employees. Some might go, oh my goodness, I'd rather just have that, twice a year or even once a year. But your Gen Zs would often then opt out for that. So you want to be able to do that informally, and they don't have to be long meetings. They're just broken up into perhaps even 5 or 10-minute meetings. The second thing I want to talk about is how to promote their relationships. So because, again, they're so used to having this online communication, they also crave that physical interaction from time to time. And for them, that, is that sign of having relationships and bonds, and they can actually connect with people. So the Generation Z, if you had to define a word to define them, and there's many words, one of them is the informal generation. So placing a really big distance, for example, in between, and lots of layers between the manager and the Gen Z employee can cause quite a few issues, and it can become quite tense to work with them. So they often love really flat structures, but what that means is they're really, really looking at those personal relationships. So to engage them in more face-to-face conversations, making sure that they have that relationship where they can physically see their employer. And if you're the business owner, and having that connection to you is going to be really, really important. So, for example, Amazon, one of the things that they do, and they're spread all over the world, of course, they have these things called affinity groups. So what they do is that they bring employees together across locations, certain locations around the world, again, because they have such a large Gen Z population, and being able to do that. So your office design has a really big part to play in that. The way that your desk is formed, how they connect to other people, not having big barriers on them, making sure that there's, the right lighting allows them a lot of that social interaction and criteria really, really helps. And they also really love that social stuff. So if that office design's designed in a way that allows them to socially catch up and have some conversations, bit of banter, and then they can actually go back to doing the work, then that often works really, really well for them. Another way to motivate Gen Z is to be able to have a flexible workplace. And again, this is, flexibility is probably one of the top 3 things for all employees of all generations. But for example, the Gen Zs particularly love the convenience of the online world. So they don't care for a lot of that excessive stress. They want to get things done really conveniently. They want to make sure that, they're not tied into this as my desk. So just the workstations and how that works, they'll often want to work outside of the confines of a traditional setup. So it's really important to be able to do that to keep them there. They also don't want to be confined to the typical 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 work style. They love having that freedom to be able to be more outcome focused and to have enough flexibility to say, as long as I'm doing that, that's great. And so if they've got that flexibility where they can go to a gym class or a yoga class or a walk in the middle of their day, because they really believe in no burnout. And, I'm a Gen X, and, burnout was not something that you talked about. You just rocked up every day, whether you were sick or not. They were the values that were instilled in me through my baby boomer parents. And that's what you did. You rocked up, you showed up, and you made sure that you were there. Gen Zs want a lot more flexibility. They want to be able to have a hybrid situation where they can work from home. They want to be able to be trusted and be more outcome driven, rather than our traditional generations as well. The other thing that Gen Zs really value is some career growth opportunities. Some of them absolutely, and I hear a lot of criticism from business owners going, oh, Shivani, they just don't have the same values. They're not the right person, but they just have a different set of behaviors, and they're a different generation. So of course they're going to want things that are different. So they don't love, some generations more so, and obviously it's personality based as well, but love that stagnancy, love that the consistency of being able to do the same things over and over again. Gen Z moves really, really fast, and they desire a job that can suit their needs, that can help them develop and help them grow. They perhaps aren't going to be in your business for 20 years, like we've seen some of the other generations do. They're always a lookout for an advancement in their careers, so that they're looking for that easily motivated. And advancement doesn't always mean more money or the title, but it's also somebody that, they can see an opportunity in the career path there. So as long as they're motivated and they can see that there's some career development in there, in terms of their learning as well, that would be great. And some of the surveys that have been done by a number of companies around the world show somewhere between 35 and 40%. So let's just call that 4 out of 10, 40% of the Gen Zs said their personal growth and learning opportunities were higher than any of the other things, more than money, more than flexibility, more than other things. So they're very, very important for the Gen Zs. So they want to have their KPIs or the OKRs that you might have set them in terms of what the goals that you want them to achieve to be really clear and make sure that they're really achievable. They love if you do one-on-one check-ins, even if they're short and frequent. And they also really love to be able to look at how they can get some more training, how they can get some more coaching, and how they can get more mentoring as well in these roles as well. And the last one that I wanted to speak about is how to embrace this notion of social media and technology in the workplace. You know, when I look at, I've got 2 teenagers, I'm really aware of the fact that technology doesn't mix on the dining table, and technology doesn't mix when they're actually having a sleep. So they're not allowed to have any phones next to their beds, and they're not allowed to have any technology when we're having dinner and connecting as a family. But the Gen Zs from a workplace are quite different. So one of the things that, flexibility and social media and technology is so intrinsic in terms of who they are. It's part of their lifestyle. It's very integrated to their day-to-day actions. Often people refer to Gen Zs as digital natives. They expect it everywhere. They expect that digital access everywhere, including work. So, let the technology, rather than avoid that with Gen Zs, be their driver. Let them be something that you can motivate them at work. So, for example, there's many startups where they've got marketing platforms. There's a lot of HR platforms in terms of how to eliminate, manual processes. So there's lots of different platforms now available. There's also platforms where they can look at the hours that they're producing, what productivity that they have. So one of the things, whether you use certain those tools, and I don't want to specifically name tools, but, there's lots of great tools in terms of their tasks and activities and their, ways to be able to improve efficiency in the workplace for them, which is really important for them. It's absolutely great. So there's lots of great tools, and looking at the technologies in terms of how you do that and how you incorporate that is great. And obviously diversity and inclusion, without even saying that, is so important. We want to have, diversity doesn't just mean gender. We just don't want to have, more females in the business. We want to have people with different age groups. We want to have people with different values. That's what creates diversity and inclusion. And you want to ensure that depending on your business and what you're trying to do to grow your business, you want to have some of these great switched on digital natives, Gen Zs, in your businesses, so that you can help them grow, and they can also help you grow. So as more of these Gen Zs enter our workforce, and as a business owner, it's so important that managers and leaders and owners of these businesses know how to incorporate these Gen Zs into their business. They know how to communicate with these Gen Zs. They know how to get more productivity out of them. And so again, they grow individually and your business grows as well. I hope that these tips have been helpful. Always up if you've got any questions. My business and my website is called askshivani.com. Please send me through any questions. Any comments are always appreciated. And if you could take a moment to rate this podcast on Apple, I would always so appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Shivani Gupta, and you've been listening to the Grow Your Business podcast. I hope you got one idea that you can think about or perhaps even implement straight away in your business. Thank you for listening. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Ask Shivani. Remember, I call it Ask Shivani, so please send me your questions that I can address in this podcast for you. And I would also so appreciate if you went to the Apple Podcast to rate and review this podcast.